the Slover tour, because we'll come back and I'll try to do that another day, maybe at a 2 o'clock meeting or something like that. And it also looks like it's good. We may get some rain Thursday, and so the opening event for the hotel has been moved over to Nauticus. So we will not have a groundbreaking on site. We'll just have announcements and fake dirt or whatever. I've done that too. So we could do that. But the governor is going to be here. So what we will do is that 4 o'clock, the council, and have to be on. Please try to be on time here because we're going to be in a pretty tight schedule. If the council will gather at 4 o'clock at the Nauticus Theater, and we will meet there with
Nauticus Theater or the MacArthur?
Nauticus, because everything's going to happen at Nauticus now. So we'll just stay. We'll meet there. We'll have the presentation by Mr. Thompson at 4 o'clock. Then at 4:30, the doors will open for the invited guests, and I've. Any member of the public who would like to come, they should have a ticket, but if they don't, we're going to try to push them in the door as well. Okay. And then but we'll give them about a half hour to get there. The event actually starts at 5, and the governor has to be out of there at 5:30. So this is going to be short and sweet. There's a small short 7-minute video as well it's going to sort of explain. The pictures will explain a lot more than the words will. The governor needs to leave at 5:30, so I'm going to welcome everybody. The governor will speak, and then Bruce will speak, and that'll be short and sweet, and we'll be going at 5 o'clock. It'll be over, but then of course there'll be food and there's music, and everybody's welcome to stay as long as you want after that. So what you need to know is it starts at 4. We're going to have a full briefing at 4 o'clock, and then the real event starts at 5. Okay? And then we'll come back and do another Slover tour when we have time.
I'm sorry, will the presentation be on, I'm not going to be able to go at 4. And I was the one that I'm really anxious to see this. Would it be online or some way that I can see it?
Sure.
Yes.
Sure. It has to be a public event anyway, so we'll make sure that happens as well.
And
will you be there at 5?
5. And who was invited? I was just curious.
I think there was a list that he got from Downtown Norfolk Council. It's a public list.
I was wondering if we did all the civic leagues in the city, or
I don't know how many people got invited, but it's a huge list. And I think we provided it in with most of the names. We did, Laurie, yeah. So. It's that time of year to start talking about school board appointments again. Breck has looked at the calendar, and we will have the public hearing on June 10th as required by law. And that any member of the public who would like to be interested and who would like to serve on the school board, their name has to be mentioned at that time. And then we will have 2 weeks to schedule interviews, and then we will make the appointments on June the 24th. It has to be done before the end of the month. So the schedule. Whose terms are up?
I don't know.
Also, we need to appoint the members of the Towing Advisory Board tonight. Bob Healy he's a retired banker, retired vice president for development at Westminster Canterbury, former chair of the Legends of Music Committee, has agreed to serve on the Towing Advisory Committee. City Code provides for the city manager to designate membership from the administration. Breck is handing out that memo. These are from the police department. There's Lieutenant James Hackett, as well as Officer Lawrence Chapman. Towing companies have 2 spots, Bill Higgins and John Tharp. So the only thing, Breck will have an ordinance for that, for us to vote on that. And then, okay, and that's, let's see, is there anything else, Breck, that I missed?
Well, just to be absolutely sure, I think when Barclay mentioned about the issue about Nauticus versus MacArthur, originally we were looking at MacArthur, and that's scratched, and it will be Nauticus. I think that's what he was mentioning.
That's because we were going to do the Slover thing, we'd walk over there, and then walk back to where we were going to break the dirt on the lot. But now the whole thing is at Nauticus. And Angela won't have to walk on her heels.
I have that.
Thank you so much.
We can park in the circle.
Right, you can park in the circle. Yes. Okay.
Paul,
Mr.
is there anybody working on the ordinance change for the retirement board and letting a retiree sit on it?
I don't, we need to have that, I guess the council, we need to prepare an ordinance that would include a retiree on our retirement board to represent the retirees. And
Your office has already done the work on it, so.
It's within your discretion, right?
Yeah.
You know, I thought we tried it one time before, and that was illegal.
No, it's within your discretion.
so if you have some names of somebody you might want to appoint to the retirement board, that would be an additional member along with everybody else who's already on the board.
You'd like to increase the number of members on the board by one?
Mary Lou, we can do that, right?
The current
Yes.
calls for 9 trustees would have to be increased.
Okay,
Right.
well, then you can, we'll go to 10 trustees.
How many do we have now?
9.
We have 9.
Because we had submitted a name of a woman by the name of Frida Clark a few years ago, and we were told that retirees couldn't be a part of that board. Things changed.
Well, they couldn't under the language, that's what we asked to change.
Paul, I think I remember that discussion, but we're now told that we can, so. All right, Marcus. Sure.
Mayor, members of council, we have a short agenda tonight. After the budget work session wrap up, we have 2 presentations. One, John Kuiper will give you an overview of the traffic control signs and how they are implemented, as well as there are a couple of polling place changes, and we have the deputy registrar who's here tonight to make that presentation. So that said, Mayor, I'll turn it back over to you in terms of the third work
See if there are
session.
any council interests. Andy, anything tonight?
Paul, just briefly, I think that my budget concerns, I had an opportunity to meet with Mark, Sabrina, and I know that.
We'll get to the budget.
Okay, I don't know if that was, I have one issue, and I think that we need to let the people know what we're doing, Marcus. About 30 days ago, I had said that we needed to come up with a plan as to how to deal with shootings that are occurring within the city. And I know that your departments have been working on this, but I think that we need to get the information out as to what the departments are doing and what they're looking to do. And I know that they have been working diligently, and I don't want to say what they have been doing, because I think that some of it, I don't think it's necessarily proprietary within, that doesn't need to be known, because I think it's something that I think the citizens need to know, that we are being very proactive. And from what I have seen in the last 30 days, there has been a lot of proactivity, at least in discussion of what we're going to do. But I can tell you, I'm still dealing with these and defending these cases as they come through the courthouse. So instead of me having to deal with these matters once they get through the courthouse, they need to be stopped before they get there. And I think that would you please talk to Chief Goldsmith and come up with either a press release, a news conference, something to say how you're going to stem these shootings that are occurring for no reason whatsoever within our city. And especially, we're going to have kids released from school, because the kids are getting younger and younger. I mean, there was a time that you could rely on a gang member to be the age of 18 to 25. You can't rely on that anymore, because what we're seeing ages 15 to 18 now committing the same crimes that those other kids were committing. And then you're seeing even younger with gang involvement. So I know that the police are being very proactive about it, and they're seeing what they're going to do, but you need to get that information out. You need to say what they're doing, what they're talking about, and implement it either through a news conference with the mayor, with you, the chief, and let the citizens know that the city has been working on this the last 30 days since I asked, because I know you have. So let's get that done before school gets out. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Riddick.
Yeah, mine is sort of protracted. Last night, there was a meeting over at the Early Childhood Center in Campostella in regards to the new Campostella Elementary School. And there was no one there from the administration, to answer questions. I think we're supposed to be the lead figure in this construction. And the developer was there, and he had architects there, but some questions should have, could have been answered by somebody in the administration. A couple of things sort of concerned me. Number one, last week and previous weeks when we had the slideshow of who the players were, it was valid. And under that, the architect was Livas. Well, when we got to the presentation last night, Livas' name was nowhere around. As a matter of fact, they didn't even make a presentation. They were there. But there are some other architects who have now appeared to have the lead handle. I was, upset about that because I was so impressed the fact that Livas' name was so prominent that I just knew that they were going to have a major role in this, $39 million plus school, maybe $31 million plus school. The African Americans don't really get a large part of anything at Norfolk. And I was just surprised that as far as this particular architectural group, which is a well-oiled organization, had been pushed, to the back. But in addition to that, what was also alarming to many of the people there is that the school is only designed for 1,071 students. And that won't even really accommodate the students on the south side. And believe it or not, last weekend, in talking to people, I was so naive to say that we were going to build a school large enough so that, and it was going to be such a great STEM emphasis school, that if somebody came in town, say from Pasadena, a military person, they would be so impressed with that program that they'd say, well, I'd like for my child to go over there. The way it is now, only the children who are going to attend to that school based on the population projected last night, you won't see anybody else that doesn't look like them. Now, we were thinking 1,300. We were thinking maybe that it would be students there plus an additional 300 students to come over to provide, some diversity there. So I know there's a formula of square footage per child. And so I think we need to look at that to make sure that we can increase that. Also, it was mentioned last night something about an LED certifiable school versus a certified school. Now, I understand that the Camp Allen School is going to be certified. It costs $50,000 because the government is paying 80% of that, so that's rolled into that. Somehow, we need to reach that and make sure that this school is certified, because once that budget is produced and the money is spent, nobody's going to go back and put $50,000 in it to make it certified.
Certified for what?
LED. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the exact same topic I was gonna have today.
Right. And so, that's important. And then on top of that, to add insult to injury, it was revealed that while this school is under construction, that the Lafayette Winona School will open up with a STEM emphasis. And what that's going to do, that's going to dilute Campostella. It's going to create, two separate schools. And nobody's going to go on the other side of the Elizabeth River if you have STEM at Lafayette Winona. And I think that would be defeating the purpose of diversity.
That's not our plan.
Yeah.
That's,
Well, we need to look
think
at that.
Paul, can we sit down with you at Campostella?
Yeah.
And talk about the
Right.
membership? I mean,
Yeah.
I think those numbers have been worked through pretty hard. I mean, but it maybe satisfy you that that number is a well thought out number. And if it needs to get bigger, it can get bigger. But the Campostella, the budget for Campostella, I think it's 33 million.
Mm-hmm.
And for instance, and that's because it's K through 8. It's 33 million, and it's STEM. For instance, the schools I think at Larchmont, Camp Allen, the one at Ocean View
And Broad Creek.
and Broad Creek are all $24 million. I mean, it's facilities are what the budgets are, so.
But we need to make sure that, that there is room for other students that want to come there, you know, as a choice,
As a matter,
as opposed to them. And we also, as I like to repeat, that we need to make it LED certified versus certifiable. And we need to talk to the school district so they will not create STEM at Lafayette Winona. Because that goes against the 60th anniversary of Brown versus the Board of Education, separate but equal. We don't want to go there. We don't wanna go there.
Lafayette Winona was only K through 2 though. Isn't that right when it's open?
No, Campus Hill is going to be 3rd through 8th grade, and Lafayette Winona will be a 3rd through 8th grade choice school, and it's supposed to be a pre-IB STEM. It's going to start off as STEM and then go to a pre-IB school. Because it takes a couple years to be certified as a pre-IB school, so they can't do that right off the bat. But I think they want to start it off as a STEM school.
So is it that it's initially opening as K through 3?
No.
Not at all.
3rd through 8th grade. And it's my understanding that the 6th grader, the parents were told that the 6th graders that were currently at Lafayette will have first choice of going to the new Lafayette when it reopens.
But you had heard about STEM as well.
Right, yeah, it is. I mean, it's going to be a STEM.
Yeah. We need to make sure that that doesn't happen.
But STEM is if you look at STEM programs across the country, it's a general, it's not necessarily a magnet program. It could also be considered a general focus in the school too. So there's different types of STEM too, Paul. There's a STEM academy and then there's STEM teaching. So there's
I
different
don't think
types.
there's a state certification for STEM.
No, it's just
I mean, it's.
just a focus in the building on math,
Right,
science,
math,
technology,
science, right.
and engineering.
Okay, well, Paul, we'll sit down right away
Okay.
and work through all that.
Right.
And the Livas name absolutely should have been on the flyer. I heard that.
Well, if it wasn't on the flyer, who is the architect?
Well, they are part of the architectural
They are.
team.
Part of the team, but
Yes, they are, yes.
who's the lead architect?
It's an aura.
Or Ripley,
The team is RRMM, Waller, Todd, Sadler, and Livas. Those are the 3 architects working on the project.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
I don't have Terry.
Just to reiterate on what he was saying, the new schools at Virginia Beach that have just been opened are LEED certified. And a friend of mine went out for one of the openings and we actually talked with the construction and they actually said they came in cheaper than they would have. And so it doesn't need to be a cost. It needs to mean that we need to pay more attention. Now that we've kind of bringing this budget to a close, I would really like to see us sit down and spend some time on all these new developments we have going around the city and understanding how they juxtapose with flooding. And we need to set guidelines. I know I talked with John Kiefer, he was kind enough to spend some time with me last week about it. And there are going to be some new guidelines that are coming down from the feds, but we need to be on top of this and making sure that people understand that we're paying attention to this. But our parking lots, our landscaping, the products that we're using, I just am really anxious that we be leaders in this instead of being mandated because it's come down from the federal government. And I think we can really make a showcase on that. And then on a not such a pleasant topic, but since we are being raked through the coals about some of our issues with housing down, or the building permits down at Ocean View, is there something that, I understand that particular situation is going to be settled legally, but is there something we need to be looking at globally as our permitting process? Are there holes in this that we need to know about? Can you satisfy for us and the rest of the citizens that this is, we're doing everything we can to equitably take care of our building permits?
Yes, Dr. Whipple. As a matter of fact, I even had a discussion with Jordan Sanderlin yesterday about how we can make sure that as we go through this process, that we have all of our i's dotted, t's crossed, and we're making sure that what we're doing is correct.
You know, I'm not saying that we're doing anything wrong, but if the perception is out there that we are, then I think we need to be transparent about what we're doing. And if in fact that, you know, we're going to have an audit or whatever, we need to tell that story instead of letting other people tell the story for us. Thank you.
Avia?
My issues are being handled, so I don't have anything.
Okay. All right, so the next budget item is Marcus has provided over the weekend everybody with a memo that addressed the issues that we finally agreed upon when we had our budget discussion last week. And this discussion, I think, was intended to be devoted to that memo, and if there's any comments or questions you had about how Marcus has responded to the conversations that we had last week. So, other than that, I would, Andy, have anything else?
No, Paul, you and I talked earlier,
Right.
and Marcus and I sat with Sabrina
Okay.
probably about a week ago. And then you and I talked earlier too. The only thing is, I think that we need to just to make sure that the circuit court's taken care of. And I know that Marcus has reached out. We just need to reassure them that we can meet their obligations. Other than that, I
Was
think
that, could you expand on that or?
there was an issue, the circuit court had some concern about their internal workings.
This was the major cut that was the 65% cut on their
No,
budget?
No, this
No, this is-
altogether, I
it
mean,
was
it's a
600,
total of
600 and some thousand. It shows more in their budget than last year, frankly. But the way they internally construct their finances, the way they distribute amongst the clerks, the way they distribute amongst the office, their copiers and things like that, they're showing that they would have a deficit. I know Marcus went over there, or at least talked to the judges about how they are set up within, and that the money can be used as they see fit. They're not tied to any particular amount. There's also the judicial education that they're required to have. So the questioning is whether or not they can meet what they are seeking, their budget requirements. I know Paul talked to the chief judge recently.
Terry, the whole thing was about a $12,000 issue.
Right,
And
I
that's how
actually,
easily it got
I
solved.
wanted, because they had come to me about it too, that
Right.
they said that they had been told they could save money wirelessly, but they in fact had to do a lot of copies
Right,
of
that was
Xerox.
part of
I
it.
think
And
we-
so I wondered
That
if
was
that was
part of
the
it.
same issue.
And I think some of it may be is that when they move into the new building, they may find that they have certain costs that they're not going to, that they've had in the older building. I think there was even some maintenance issues that they know that they can cut. But I know that they talked to me, they talked to Marcus, they talked to Paul, and I think that they're much more reassured that they can,
That $12,000 issue,
That
Marcus
there's-
will solve.
right.
And then we'll enter into they'll develop a greater appreciation, I think, for the budgeting process, having had this discussion over there. They're just, they're,
This is because they had approached me about
Yes,
it, and
ma'am.
I talked to Marcus about it, so I wanted to make sure we were on the same page. Okay.
Yeah, I think, and Paul reassured them, and I know Marcus did, that is, they can make their requirements and their educational requirements. Other than that, everything else I had been met with in meetings.
right. And Mr. Riddick?
Yes.
I'm fine.
Terry?
Well, as I said last week, I was concerned about the schooling. I would like to have more money, but I'm satisfied that what Marcus has come up with to meet about $7.5 million at this point, and that hopefully would be increased by the state budget. So I feel that you've done a good job on that.
Ditto to what Terry said, because we have been inundated with emails and calls about the school budget, so I was glad to see that we were able to give them some additional money.
Angela?
I'll be there.
Thank you. Tommy?
I don't have a ditto. Did the school system already factor in the $2.4 million carryover in their budget?
Not the surplus from FY13. That's the 2.4 that we're talking about.
Because some of the school board members have indicated that they already had included that in their budget, so I don't know which carryover.
Was it
They were
3.5?
carryover from the current year,
Uh-huh.
which is, I think, maybe 3.6 million that they did factor in, but from the FY 2013 surplus is not in that number.
I think probably just as a lesson, we probably should have had a joint meeting with the school board closer to during this budget period, even if it was a special meeting, so that we can work out some of these issues. Some of the comments were made about priorities and just making sure that we're all speaking the same language, because unfortunately, I don't know where it's coming from, but you read in some of the emails, even though the work last week of trying to get additional funding for the school system, you still have emails saying that we're not giving teachers a 2% raise. And I understand that, we all have thick skin, but I think that we need to have that conversation, more conversation with the school board, so that there's just a mutual understanding of how all this is working. And maybe that some of our priorities with education as well. We can't tell the school board how to spend the money, but we can talk about our priorities. And I am just as concerned as Terry is with infrastructure, and what are we going to do with some of the school construction. Some of the comments that I'm hearing about Maury and whether the next steps, we've got some long-term issues that we're going to end up having to deal with this, and we have to have that conversation, which leads into my my other just quick issue, I guess. 4 years on council, it's interesting to see how the budget cycle works, and we always reach this point where you come out and present a budget to us, and then we have to react to it. And I'm trying to find a way that from this point forward, that there's more of a collaborative effort with council members or in our wards with building the budget, as opposed to reacting to what your staff comes up with. I think our part of it is a little bit too late, and then you end up having some of those comments like on the neighborhood funding and things. And we've got to start building next year's budget when we vote on this tonight, and start looking at those things. So it goes back to my neighborhood questions and how we fund neighborhoods and the 120 other neighborhoods in our city that end up getting left out every year in the budget. How do we start those conversations now, not wait until the retreat to have an hour conversation about neighborhoods, and then I'll wait until May to have a conversation about it, and then we look at the budget, and the budget shows funding for neighborhoods, but only for 4. We've got to start that now. We've got to have those meetings now and those dialogues to figure out, how do we help 5 Points? How do we help Park Place? How do we help East Little Creek Road? And getting funding to their priorities and start addressing some of the plans that are in Plan 2030. Our budget process started off when I first got here really great. It was very interactive. I think you held 5 or 6 meetings. I know you've pared that down, but I think we need to go back to that type of style with our involvement in that, with our civic league, so that they understand that they are part of this and they want to see that money being spent. But just, I'm making these comments now instead of, I'm going to vote for the budget, but I'm making them now in more of an informal way. But I hope we don't wait till the retreat to talk about this. I hope that it starts tonight. And we've got to address this. We can't continue to just fund 4 neighborhoods in the city.
Well, what we do, I mean, the budget is spread across the entire city, the entire budget. What we have done, and Tommy, I'm not taking issue with what you said, but the way we started off at one point years ago having a special project for Ocean View. And then and then we went and added, different neighborhoods, Broad Creek, and because there were some neighborhoods that were apparent needed more help than others. And that's how we developed a list of these 4 or 5 neighborhoods that have received have received additional funds. Ocean View, for instance, we started way back when putting $4 or $5 million extra in Ocean View because it was clear not only had it not received its fair share, but also that it was in need of a lot more attention if we were gonna turn the situation around. Same was in, in Fairmont, the infrastructure in there was in really sad shape. So we tried to not only, they get their share of what every other neighborhood gets, but they get the additional funds. And so, but, maybe it's time to look hard at these neighborhood plans and see if, some of them can be finished out or some of them can be closed out, and we can spread that money across the various, neighborhoods. And if we all have that discussion, understand how that's where we're gonna proceed, I think that'd be fine. Okay.
Some of the plans have reached either impossibility or much of it has been concluded. I know that we examined the Ward's Corner one,
Yeah.
and there was either issues of impossibility because of eminent domain, or there was issues of matters were actually concluded. So, if I remember, Barclay and Terry, I think we were pushing 80-some% of that plan had either reached that point. So I think if we did that with all the different plans, then we may see that we've actually done that. But I think Tommy's talking in a broader sense too.
Right.
Because he and I talked offline about it. And I do like the idea of maybe having budget input, instead of meeting individually the way I did recently with Marcus and Sabrina, post the document being produced, is maybe in January, February, Marcus's office reaches out and says, why don't you, let's meet in my office, come to my office, and let's get together and let's talk about what you're looking for in Ward 1. Tommy talks about his ward, and then those seem to gel over that period of time as we start to see where the money, and I think that would be a
I
nice
still
way to
think
do
the
it.
manager is required by our ordinance to present the budget. It is before, he still has to compile, and the manager's responsibility is to present the budget. It's not a collaborative process from start to finish. At some point, he makes decisions, says, okay, here's my best shot, and now you guys see what you can do with it.
But that would be after feedback. I
Right.
think you could still do that.
Sure you could.
Yeah.
I think a good example is I called Marcus recently, and I don't want to belabor this point. I think we've been around the table, we're almost done. But I called him recently on an issue dealing with being able to pedestrian and bike between Bayview Boulevard and Ward's Corner now. You take your life into your own hands as you get through that interstate intersection just north of the HRT station there. You can't do it. And so that would have been, and that was brought to me recently, post-budget. But it's something that I understand he's turned over to John Kiefer, and John's office is looking at it to make that some way we can be more pedestrian and bike friendly in an area that has a lot of pedestrians and bikes coming through. It's very dangerous. So that's something that it would be on me to go to him pre-budget time instead of way post, and it wouldn't be in this cycle. That's something that my vision should have been relayed to him ahead of time.
Can you?
But I'm sorry. So that's, I think is a way that we can deal with it. He can then look at that. We can then talk about it here at a budget. Andy brought this to the table. Is that something we're interested in at this time, or do we put this off 3 years? I'd like that, and I think that collaborative effort and input, because some of it's political input that we have to bring.
Maybe I'm misunderstanding something because Andy he said paring down. Before we got elected that year, you guys took all those neighborhood plans. It was an article in the newspaper, and you pared them down to about 50, I think. So you already eliminated all the ones that were not going to,
50?
yeah, or you got them down,
Yeah,
whatever the number was.
We did.
And then there was a new process with the Plan 2030, in which you guys have narrowed it down to 20, roughly, areas of the city that covers all of our wards. That's what I'm talking about funding. And in Ward's Corner, there's a Ward's Corner part of that plan. They pulled things that were priorities out of the original plan. That's what I'm talking about funding. And there's an amendment, addendum to it. If you go in the back of the binder, it lists how much money is estimated to meet the items that are underneath there. So it says East Little Creek Road corridor, and it says bike lanes on there. It says how much it would cost to get there. And we're supposed to be funding those plans now for the next 20 years. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about these comprehensive studies with the pretty pictures because all of them have become obsolete. I mean, there was one down in Ocean View was done in 2003, but there's items that were extracted from that and put in the Plan 2030 that have been identified as funding for those that we should be looking at as a council. It's 5 points is in there. Remember, Anthony was upset because the language for 5 points wasn't really
Right.
covering the
I
need.
agree.
So went back and rewrote it, and that is in that plan. So those are really what we should be looking at as a council and identifying small projects and things that can be addressed with some of this neighborhood funding. That's what I'm talking about. So maybe I just you misunderstood or something, but yeah.
Which part you were, because there's so much, I mean, you have the plans, and then you had that, and I do remember exactly.
I'm calling that our plan now. That's the
Okay.
20-year plan, and then we can make changes to it and adjustments, but that's the plan that we voted on for the next 20 years, that Paul will still be the mayor, probably.
Mr. Reddick, did you?
Yeah, in regards to the money that we put in the neighborhoods, maybe it is time to look in another direction. I hate to say this, but if it were to happen, Norview certainly should be in the arena, as well as Huntsville/Lindenwood. Both need a lot of attention. I think about Coleman Place, which needs a lot of attention. So maybe we do need to, in this next time out, as much as I reluctantly reduce what's given to the south side. If it were going to Huntersville and Lindenwood, I think I would, kind of support that. We have a couple of dollars on the south side, and I think we can afford to.
Just a few.
More than the rest put together.
Yeah. But, I really think that, Tommy has,
I think we've all felt like that.
Right.
Marcus, one other thing I was gonna mention out loud is that of the $300,000 that I asked last week to go into school maintenance, there's a small project at Granby High School that Tommy and the folks out there, that I was out there the other day. There's that terrible asphalt track that needs repair behind the school that the community uses. I don't want any more money. I'd just like to have about $25,000 of that earmarked. Every time that you get a project from John, it's either 25,000 or 100,000. It's 25,000 if it's something they can do, or it's 100,000. So, but if you could just put a footnote in there that the first draw on that $300,000, apparently it's been bouncing back between our public works, between our parks and open space people and the school board about whose responsibility it is to fix that track. It's a little bit of everybody's, actually, I guess.
It's
So,
over 30 years old, they said.
yeah, and so all it is asphalt. It's not like it's
I'm
a
not
real
sure
track.
25 you can do it,
But,
You're gonna
or
see
whatever,
it out and
whatever
look
it
at it.
takes. But you know what I'm talking about, Terry.
yeah.
I
So,
mean, it's that thing, I mean, it's so, well, Julian's been out there. I mean, you've seen it, Paul. That thing is,
Yeah.
so anyway, so if that money could be used for that, okay.
how much is left from that?
Of the 300?
Yeah.
No,
275?
no, I mean, I think 275.
Because if we could just do a placeholder for, do you have anything about for a new recreation center in Poplar Hall? In there?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
we do.
We
Okay.
do.
Yes, under the master plan, it's
Good.
money, yes.
But this is maintenance for school.
This is school
buildings.
stuff.
On school maintenance?
This
Yeah.
is just school
Okay.
maintenance.
There's money,
But
there's
that
language
might
in there
fall
for
under
Poplar Halls for design,
Okay.
for.
As Tommy says,
the
every time
recreation
the school
center.
system,
Yeah.
every time we say to Parks and Rec, that's what it is.
They say
Parks and
They
Rec
say it's
says
the
no
school's
schools.
responsibility,
This is as good a use of the money as they'll find.
and it's
out
used
there.
by everybody over there.
That's why I'm saying it should be Parks and Rec.
Yeah,
That's why it should be Parks and Rec, because it's used
Yeah.
by the neighborhood too.
This just fixes it. It's done, they won't have to squabble.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, you had
Just-
some other stuff.
I'm sorry, just one last point. I'm a little confused about this discussion about the neighborhood plans, because I thought when you and I met last week, and I presented this issue, I think we've all seen in here about neighborhood plans, that I find, I'm sorry, after 8 years, I'm still befuddled between what's CSB and what's nuisance abatement and where all this money goes. And I thought, Marcus, at that time you told me you were gonna spend time this summer, like in a next meeting or two, talking about how everything was gonna be
Yes.
consolidated and it was gonna be priority driven versus plans.
Yes, so
Am I stealing your thunder on
A
this?
little bit, but that's
Okay.
fine. So I think somewhere in that briefing, there may be $16 million that's in our capital improvement plan that's spread throughout all the neighborhoods, sidewalks, streets, bridges. And then there's a breakdown that talks about the funding for the 4 neighborhood plans. Then there's a breakdown that talks about funds that go over to the housing authority that's for a number of neighborhoods. The first budget work session, this issue came up, and the council said, please don't wait until the retreat to talk about it. So what we're planning to do is in June, come back to the council and do exactly what was presented tonight, is just go back to Plan 2030 and talk about how we took 100 plans, we consolidated them down to 78, and then we took those 78, and I think we're down to about 18. But many of them still have elements of those plans. So if we start and we put those against the wall and discuss the money that's funded, and then to talk about all of the measures, because they have metrics that are associated with all of those, and get feedback from council as to how you'd like to proceed going forward for funding for neighborhood plans, it would be almost like a reset button. And that's what we're prepared to do in June to at least start the conversation.
Before I yield the floor, Marcus, and this isn't about the budget, but the city had a great weekend, and I just want to, there were a lot of people who had we can't take responsibility for the Greek festival, but that place, I mean, it's become an attraction all over. I mean, people come from all over the region for that. They come to the Stockley Gardens Arts Festival. They come, the beer festival was jammed. And on top of that, there was other events. There was a baseball game going on. There was the Arts Festival was doing its thing with the Harlem Dance Theater was here. But there were other things happening. There were smaller events. They had something going on at Nauticus. I mean, it was really a wonderful 3 or 4 days in the city, and the duck is still here. If you haven't seen the duck, you got it. You need to see the duck. Have you
It
seen
did,
the duck
made the
yet?
national
It
news.
made world
Right.
news
Did it
tonight.
really?
Yeah, world news tonight. They talked about the duck in the Chrysler Museum.
Did it really?
Yeah.
I had a copy
I
of
saw
that.
it.
What, on CBS or
On-
NBC?
No, it was on
CNN?
CBS.
The CBS is
Yeah.
world news tonight.
Yeah, ABC.
Who's world news tonight?
But then
I
sadly,
just
they
remember
followed it up
seeing
with
it.
the fact that it had also been in Hong Kong and it
Yeah.
deflated.
Deflated.
Yeah, yeah.
But it didn't deflate here.
So I would have done
Not
it
yet.
different. I wouldn't have told people it was coming. I would have just put it in the water. You wake up,
It was really cool.
just big duck.
It was a bad night to drink with
And we
That's
had-
art. That's art right there. What is that?
The
And we
mayor
had
would
a
have gotten a
world
million phone
premiere.
calls.
We had a world premiere at the Narrow.
Right.
And I was in the documentary.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, over there. And that was well attended too on Thursday night.
Is there any way we could scatter some of this out over the month? The reason we had to have everything on the same weekend.
And the weather was, I mean, we just got
Yeah.
really,
We were lucky.
but it was terrific,
Lots of fun.
just terrific. And I know your staff was stretched thin, and I know you just went to party after party, right, so everybody else worked. But it was a great weekend. Not many cities anywhere could pull off what this city pulled off.
I have one thing. Marcus, do all of our recreation centers have Wi-Fi?
I don't think so.
Okay. If so, we're missing Wi-Fi in the Ingleside Recreation Center, not the gym, but the rec center. We have
This is.
no Wi-Fi there.
I just got.
You have to share, it's Terry. It's like passing notes in class, you have to share.
This, I will.
Okay. All right, so Marcus, you got 30 minutes. Sure.
Okay. So Mayor and Council, John is going to give you an overview of the traffic control signal program in the city to address some of the questions that were raised at the last formal session.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. For a number of years, we presented traffic control ordinances individually, and then starting about 10 years ago, we combined them. So 3 or 4 times a year, you'll see packages with a single ordinance presenting a number of different stop sign and yield sign ordinances with it. But to start with, the state and city code with respect to intersections without stop or yield signs is as shown here. The driver of the vehicle on the left yields to the right-of-way to the vehicle on the right. As the city has matured, traffic volume, sometimes speeds have increased, safety concerns are noted, leading to additional signs. Sometimes sight distances changes, shrubs and buildings and so forth are expanded. So we see more and more traffic signs as we go along. Our Public Works Department has standard procedures that we follow with respect to that. Our policy provides guidelines and procedures to be followed when we get an inquiry for installation of stop signs. Stop and yield signs are one of the most effective control devices when used at the right place and under the right conditions. They're intended to help drivers and pedestrians at an intersection decide who has the right of way. There are misuses of stop signs to arbitrarily interrupt through traffic by causing it to stop, which leads to an inconvenience to force people to use other routes, which often is undesirable. And where stop signs are nuisances or speed breakers, there tends to be a high incident of intentional violations, so we give careful consideration whenever we put stop signs in. So we use well-developed, nationally recognized guidelines to indicate when these controls become necessary, and it relates to the probability of vehicles arriving at the intersection at the same time. And also we deal with the need for safe crossing opportunities for pedestrians, including children. Public Works is responsible for determining the appropriate application of stop signs, and we make recommendations to City Council for including these signs in ordinances. We base our evaluation on the criteria in the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, which is the National Traffic Control Manual for guidelines for uses of various traffic control devices. Stop signs are typically not for arterials or major collector roadways, and we look for other measures to deal with problems on those types of roadways. They should not be used as a sole means of traffic calming, but can be used in conjunction with other neighborhood traffic issues. The process is initiated either by an oral or written request from a civic group or an individual with a safety concern. Installation of stop signs may be warranted based on an investigation. Every one of these is investigated by one of our professional traffic engineers. We look at a number of the factors are listed there, what the intersecting streets are, if you have a side street coming into an arterial or collector street where two arterials or collectors intersect, where the hourly vehicle volume, the annual accident rate, specific speed counts and rates indicate the need for signals. And one of the things that's happening in a lot of the neighborhoods is a need when there's visual obstructions that restrict the sight triangle that I'll talk about in a second. Again, whenever we have a request, our traffic staff does a field investigation, taking a look at a number of things indicating there, including the sight distance, which is an area that as you approach an intersection, you need to be able to see the vehicles off to the side, as let's see, shown on the this one here. As a vehicle approaches an intersection, you need to be able to see vehicles coming from the side streets. So if there are shrubs, buildings, trees, things of that nature, that can cause sight distances to reduce over time, and it's determined by vehicle speed and the approaching distance. Other factors are listed here: street width, the alignment of streets, both vertically and horizontally, in terms of whether you can see who's coming, pedestrian volumes, crossings and crosswalks, the street functions, whether you're near a school or a park or another area where you have a lot of children playing, bus stop locations, the types of traffic, whether you have just automobiles or whether you have trucks. Have there been any recent changes in traffic patterns or the street patterns, volumes, accident history? One other factor is the pattern in the vicinity. If you're coming down a particular street and the side streets or your main street are controlled by stop or yield, you'll tend to think that all of the intersections are. So you need to have a consistency. You can't be driving down the street when all of the side streets have stop or yield signs and then suddenly one doesn't. And, people on that side street think that they can come through and that can lead to accidents. So oftentimes when we look at the stop signs, we also look at the adjacent streets to make sure that we're not doing anything that's inconsistent in a particular area. Community input is very important. We seek the input of the area civic league or whatever community groups. They are consulted as part of the process where there is any kind of an active group. In some cases, we do evaluate a larger area of the neighborhood for consistency. We don't always agree that there's stop signs. If criteria are not met, then we do notify the requesting party in written form. One intersection that was mentioned last week was on Portal, and that's one where we don't recommend a stop sign. If the criteria are met, the results are forwarded by me and the city manager to the city council with an ordinance package. Again, that these are passed by city council a few times a year, and following that, we install the signs and markings. Why are there so many stop sign requests? Again, we've grown from where we had a lot of uncontrolled intersections. There are a lot of citizens' concerns about safety and speeding. As landscaping has matured, fences near intersections have constructed, the landscaping has grown. That decreases sight visibility, so often that's the reason. You'll be presented the ordinance again tonight with the different signs that we mentioned there. And in blue here, it's indicated the origin of the request. The first one was a citizen request to switch a sign around. The next three were coordinated with the Bayview Civic League based on some requests that we received out there. The number 2 there, 27th Bay and Wilburn Street, came from the East Beach Homeowners Association, and so forth. You can see the things there. We worked number 4, the Fairmont Park Civic League, number 5, Bayview Civic League, numbers 5, B, C, and D were all issues raised by citizens relating to children playing in the area or playgrounds nearby. And the final one there is a new streets in the Harbor Walk area of the city.
But when I've just seen now, request from citizen, request from citizen, request from citizen.
Yes, sir.
But do you take that, and this is where the rub is, you may have a citizen request, but what's I have heard in the past is that is not going to the Civic League. You've told me today that it does go to the Civic League. In the past, those have not. So I'm looking up here, and it says citizen request and work with Bayview Civic League president. And then you have work directly with Fairmont Park Civic League, but number 3 says request from citizen. Once it's requested from the citizen, it doesn't affect just the citizen. It affects the 10 other houses on the block.
Yes, sir.
Are you now taking that to the Civic League? Or are you just going to accept what the citizen says and we're stuck with it?
No, if there is an active Civic League, we take it to them. As you know, many areas in the city do not have one. This area here is along the shopping center at the Colley Underpass, where there's no particular group dealing with it there. But where there is an active Civic League, we absolutely do take it to them and do consider their input. And we don't, and it is based on our judgment of our professional engineers before we even get to that point. So, I don't know if we've always done that in the past. We've certainly tried to do that, and that certainly is our policy to consult with whatever neighborhood groups are available.
Well, last night I was at a Civic League, and you had one person wanted a stop sign in a particular spot.
Yes, sir.
Well, there were 30 people in there. And I said, wait a second. You got 30 people. It was a Civic League. I said, you all need to get together, decide where you want your stop signs, and then let us know.
Yes,
and that put the onusness on the Civic League, because I can tell you, one citizen can make a request, and the next thing you know, the 10 other people on that block are saying, how the heck did that stop sign get there? It shouldn't be there. And we in turn have done that. I know from personal experience we've done it. And I know we did it with no parking in Lock Haven, and Barclay may remember in front of the park, because one citizen didn't want parking in front of a public park that Barclay had really taken all the time to put there. And Barclay may remember that. They've gone since. They've left the neighborhood since. So you know the house. So, that wasn't the Civic League's discussion. It was one person wanted it. The Civic League was not for it. and they've since left the neighborhood. So I'm just saying, I think that you all had lost from me. And I don't want to use the word credibility because it's too harsh a word. But I can tell you it happened at Northside. And that Civic League said, we never asked for all those stop signs. So, and then it happened in Lock Haven because I had to deal with it twice with 2 different stop signs. And in fact, at one, I was told you asked for it. I never asked for it. I think it was just something that was your department's response back to me. And I wasn't about to make an argument from the dais when that happened. So the bottom line is, I just want to make sure that one person isn't coming in and affecting the remainder of neighborhoods, and that we do discuss it with the neighborhoods before we're affecting their daily traffic.
Yes, sir, we do discuss it with
Okay.
the neighborhood. I would say
I
though
take your
that
word on that, right?
if one citizen does point out a safety problem, we are obligated to take a look at it. And if we believe that there is something that needs a sign, then we should be discussing with the Civic League. That is
Exactly.
our policy.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I just want to
And
make
if
sure that's.
we haven't done it, then, you know,
Okay.
we will. Yes, sir.
My concern on Grove was what I've heard, like on 50 and in some of the other streets. When you do a series of stop signs like every other block, do they just become obsolete anyway and people just run them? If there's no police enforcement out there, people over time just learn to ignore them because they're just hindering their way to work, you know, and so I'm just gonna roll right through the stop sign and then Andy makes money, you know, when they get in an accident. I'm just gonna-
We hope they don't.
You know, I'm just, that's
Yeah.
what my concern is when you do that series of stop signs. I know this is, you know, something that's minor, but we do get complaints from citizens who then say, gosh, you guys just came through and just put all those stop signs up. Now I can't get to work, you know, it's like, you know, and that's where my issue is more when you do the series of stop signs to control traffic, it really impacts the people more who live in the neighborhood. And then you do have that one citizen. I always say that as long as there's cars on the road, there's gonna be speeders. And anybody standing on the road, every car's speeding. I mean, every car, you talk to citizens, that car's speeding. That car might only be doing 20 miles per hour,
Very good.
but it's a speeder because it's, you know, they're standing stationary. You know, I've heard of judges that roll marbles across tables and ask the police how fast it's going, and if they can't tell them, they say, well, it's dismissed. You know, how do you tell? And that's what my concern is that we just end up, and then we end up going back and taking the stop signs up because you get more complaints from people. Or
Yes,
they're not
sir.
maintained, so that's my concern.
Yes, sir. I made the point in there that, you know, that nuisance stop signs and as a traffic calming measure, that they're not particularly effective, and we tend to, you know, oppose those. A couple that you've mentioned, there have been a few neighborhoods where the one that you mentioned where the Civic League has come in and said they would like to do that as a means to prevent cut-through traffic as well as speeding. People do run through stop signs, but they roll through them. At least they slow down. There aren't many people who just blow through them at full speed. So in that regard, they do have some benefit, but we agree with you that just to use them as a nuisance to stop traffic and keep people coming through the neighborhood can be problematic, and it has some certainly some negative side effects.
John, how does this compare to when we do speed bumps?
We also have a procedure
Requirement
on
for speed bumps.
speed humps,
Yeah.
not speed bumps. Speed humps are a little broader. You know, we have a procedure there. That's one of our traffic calming methods. And we go through quite a procedure before we do those because they are expensive. They are, you know, quite obstructive in the neighborhood. We try to do other things to slow traffic down. We can, you know, paint lines on the street or center lines and so forth. And only in the extreme measures do we get to where we do speed humps and stop signs in the neighborhood. And it's usually, again, in those situations, those are definitely requests from the community and usually in response to problems with a lot of cut-through traffic or at least a perception of speeding. As far as speeding, we do speed studies, and if we find that there is not speeding, then, you know, then that does not, you know, add to the warrants for doing the signs or the speed humps or whatever.
hope I've answered your question, but we do have a procedure for speed humps, but we're restrictive on using them. They cost a few $1,000s a piece and, need to be maintained as well. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak on behalf of the Norfolk Electoral Board. We have a couple precinct relocation recommendations for City Council this evening. The first is to move the Ballantyne School into the new Ray and Joan Kroc Core Community Center. And the second we'll be discussing is the move from the Hunton YMCA to Ruffner Academy. Our first move is to permanently relocate to the Kroc Community Center. The precinct name would still remain as Ballantyne because that does cover the Ballantyne community. We hope to do this with elections beginning November 2014. The Kroc Center is a newly constructed, beautiful building, I might add, with adequate space, amenities, and ample parking. It's located 0.6 miles from the Ballantyne precinct line, so it is within the requirements of the law to meet that move. Currently, we have 2,589 registered voters in the Ballantyne precinct, of which 2,338 are active. In November of 2012, the presidential election, there were 1,762 ballots cast. ADA compliance has been completed by the City of Norfolk's ADA coordinator, and this proposal has been approved by the area commander of the Salvation Army, as well as management of the Kroc Center, and they are strongly in favor of us going into that location. Here's some pictures of the exterior of the Ray and Joan Kroc Community Core Center, and you see there's ample parking access for handicap accessibility. And the inside, we are looking at the room at the end of the hall as you enter the front of the building of the lobby towards the right. There is a separate entrance and exit, and there is a retractable wall that can be removed for the larger elections to expand into the space next door. So we have adequate space in there. Our second recommendation from the Norfolk Electoral Board is to permanently
What is wrong
relocate
with
Ballantyne School.
Right.
It's a very old building. The city currently owns that. I know there are plans, or there had been plans to sell the building, but the current condition of the building has been hard to maintain. It is only open for election days. It hasn't been used as a building otherwise.
Is it even ADA?
I just want to comply.
It is, but the condition of the building on the interior, the paint's falling off, the floors coming up. Currently, police department and SWAT have been using that for exercises, if you can imagine. It's not a building that we would want to remain in. They've maintained the gym area for polling places, but other than that, it's not a building we want to stay in.
Stephanie, have you talked to the Civic League about movement? Instead of us dictating it to them that this is what we're going to, are the Civic Leagues familiar with the fact that we would look to move it from literally out of the neighborhood to the Kroc Center?
No, we have not talked to the civic leagues.
Would that be your next step after you talk to us, or?
We typically haven't, normally in the past, it's gone on the agenda for public hearing if the civic leagues were interested. We talked with the center that we were interested in moving into that. We hope that would be a positive thing, given that's a new center in the community that's been talked up in the community.
If it's 0.6 miles outside of the precinct.
Yeah, the current, actually, Ballantyne School is currently outside of the precinct. It's right down the road. Ballantyne School doesn't actually fall
you go
within the
back,
precinct
please?
line, sure. The Ballantyne School is the red dot there,
Yes.
so it's actually outside the precinct line. It would just be going further down. It's within 1 mile, which is the requirement of the precinct
I
line,
was
but
gonna
we
say,
haven't
is there
talked to the civic leagues. No, it's been at Ballantyne School for a while. I think we
Looking at the
talked
church.
about that before.
We're looking at the church,
Mhm.
okay,
And the church didn't meet the ADA requirements.
okay.
So there's nothing within the,
There's no
Outline.
public buildings within the precinct boundaries.
This is better than the first proposal a few years ago, Coleman Place was proposed. And it would have severely impacted the residents who had been used to voting at Ballantyne. And our city attorney was the one that informed us that although Ballantyne was closed, we could still use it because it had electricity and, and all of those things. So I think it's a pretty good location.
Yes, we did look at consolidating that with Coleman Place before. But the current condition of the building, facilities for the city maintains the building for us, and it's only open on election days.
Okay.
This is coming to us on June 10th.
No, there is no primary election.
No, I mean, it's coming on our ordinance.
I'm not sure when it's been slated yet
I guess
for the
point I'm
formal
trying to
session.
make is that maybe we could send something out to the affected civic league
Sure.
to let
We
them
will for
know.
public hearing, won't we?
Yes,
Yeah.
there
Well-
has to be a notice in the paper for 2 consecutive weeks, once a
I
week for 2
noticed in the
consecutive
paper,
weeks.
but not something specific to the civic league.
Yeah, I really
so-
think it should be more personal than a
Yeah,
notice in the paper.
That's what I'm saying.
I really think the
Yeah,
civic league should receive something.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, your
Yeah.
idea is fine, I understand it,
Yeah.
and I understand it's
Common place
the
at
best of all.
Valentine and, yeah, definitely.
But I really think you need to, we, as a city, we need to be a lot more cognizant that we're asking the citizens to move further, even though it's a great place,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a change.
Yes,
And I think you need to educate change in advance of an election, because if you don't, citizens are going to show up at Valentine, even though we had a public hearing, and then we say, well, we gave you a public hearing, and that's not enough. So I think we can do a better job
I
of
know
that.
typically in the past, whenever we have a polling place change, we do put notices in the paper as well as on our website.
Not everybody
We-
gets the
I
paper
know,
on
and we
Friday.
mail
All the
out new
voters
voter
get a new
cards.
voter card.
Everybody
Right.
gets a new voter card within the
That is
precinct, as
true.
well as a
Yeah.
map indicating where the new location is. We put signs up at the old polling place to relocate.
And I have been the
So,
secretary of your
yeah.
electoral board, and people still will show up at
They still
Valentine
will show
School
up, right.
going, where do I go? Why
Right.
isn't there an election? So I think we need to get a little bit more proactive and earlier if we're making these changes. But that's fine, I understand we need to get it done.
Down the road, is there any opportunity to merge precincts? I know you guys have slowly
Depending
tried
on
to collapse
The size.
because of equipment. So-
Right, well, we did do some precinct consolidations before. We've looked at those in the past. We didn't have any immediately in mind at this point, due to the size of the current precinct population. You can't have but so many voters within
5,000, right.
5,000.
The reason why I
once
said
you go
that,
over that.
because these are just lines, people vote, they'll vote, but if there was another precinct next to it that was smaller that can merge in, that now the Kroc Center could be in both of their boundaries, because he just changed the lines, and they're hurting with equipment, the amount of equipment that's failing, and so collapsing and consolidating is better.
If we can, we will definitely come to you with that. The second proposal is to relocate the polling place for the Hunton Y precinct from the Hunton Y MCA, actually across the street to Ruffner Academy. Again, this would impact elections beginning in November 2014. The precinct name would change to Ruffner. Ruffner Academy has adequate space, amenities, and a parking area, whereas the current precinct, you have to park on-street if you are driving. It's located .30 miles from the Hunton Y precinct line. Currently, there are 894 registered voters in this precinct, of which 769 are active. In the presidential election of 2012, 611 ballots were cast. And ADA compliance has been completed by the City of Norfolk's ADA coordinator, and it's been reviewed with the principal and office staff at the front area of Ruffner Academy. We're looking at, actually, here's the exterior of the school, as you can see. And there is a drive-up area. If there was anybody that needed to vote at the vehicle, we could assist them with that there. And we were looking at using the auxiliary gym, which is next to the larger gym in the school, as the polling area for elections.
Have, again, like the same issue, there's a tenant management association over at Tidewater Gardens, and, we need to, because there are a lot of seniors that are over there.
Yes.
And crossing the street is really a big deal. But we need to definitely make sure that we reach out to them.
We can talk to them. As we discussed a minute ago, notification is required for public hearing. There does have to be a notice posted once a week for 2 consecutive weeks, and City Council would, of course, have to vote at formal session on this. We would hope to send out new voter cards for any changes in precinct polling locations by September 1st to give adequate time for the voters in those areas to notify them of the change in polling place locations.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Just briefly before we break and go upstairs, does anybody have any questions about public hearing 7? That's the reauthorization of the downtown improvement district. I mean, there's zero opposition. In fact, there's complete support for it. But it is, a question of renewing the increased tax rate, but everybody's for it. And the money's well spent. And then there are R2 and R3, which are the tourism development plans, which is sailing along, will help the finance of the new development. So, okay?
We're asking for
Marcus, you got
continuing
anything you want to
on
say?
page 5.
And then PH 5, we're
Yep.
going to ask to be continued. Okay?
Which one is it?
The DSS development, rezoning from R6 to R8, or downzoning, I should say, from R6 to R8.
Is that the one over
That's
in
in
Glen Oak?
Glen Rock.
Glen Rock.
Glen Rock?
Glen Rock.
30 days.
It says June 10th.
Okay. All right, thank you. We'll get started right on the nose. So.
Yeah, that's fine.